I'm 81 years old, and I'm about to tell you something that no father should ever have to admit. My son is alive and well, living about 4 hours from here, and I couldn't tell you the last time he called me, not because he's dizzy or he forgot, but because I taught him that feelings were something you lock away. And he did, with me on the other side of the door. Some of you saw my last video. If you didn't, that's all right. My name is Walt Hartley. I'm 81. I lost my wife, Diane, when she was 41. I had a brother named Eddie who lived more in 640 years than I had in 81. And I spent my whole life playing it safe. But there's a part I left out, a part that keeps me up at night. My son's name is James. He was 7 when his mother died. He came home from school one day, and the house felt different. The person who used to fill our home with light was gone, forever. But even before all that, Diane saw it in him. James was maybe 4 or 5, and he'd sit at the kitchen table with her crayons, drawing for hours. She used to hold them up and say, "Walt, look at what he sees." And I'd nod and go back to my paper. And when she was gone, I had no idea what to do. I was never good with feelings. My father wasn't the kind of man who sat you down and asked how your day went. He showed love by keeping the lights on and food on the table. That was it. And when Diane passed, I reached for the only playbook I had, my father's playbook. Keep your head down, stay busy, don't fall apart, be strong for the boy. So that's what I did. I went back to work within a week. I made sure James had clean clothes, a packed lunch, help with his homework. I showed up to every school event, sat in the back row, drove him home, asked if he had any tests coming up. I kept the machine running. But I never once sat that boy down and said, "I miss your mom too, and it's okay to be sad." Not once. Because in my mind, if I opened that door, if I let the grief in, it would swallow us both. I thought I was holding us together. Turns out I was just teaching my son that pain is something you carry alone, that feelings are a crack in the foundation you can't afford to show. James became a quiet kid after Diane passed. Teachers said he was well-behaved, polite, no trouble at all. And I took that as a win. I thought, good, he's handling it. He's tough. He's like me. He was drowning in silence, and I was too blind to see it because his silence looked exactly like mine. As he got older, I did what my father did to me. I steered him toward the safe path. When he said he wanted to study art in college, I told him that was a nice hobby, but not a career. When he talked about moving to New York after graduation, I said, "And do what? Starve in some apartment?" When he brought home a girl I didn't think was right for him, I made sure he knew it. I never raised my voice or was cruel. I just had this way of making the risky choice feel foolish. A raised eyebrow, a long pause. Well, if you think that's smart. It's the same thing my father did to me. The same quiet pressure that kept me in Ohio my whole life. And I passed it right down to my boy, like an inheritance nobody asked for. James studied law, got a steady job, and married a sensible woman. They bought a beautiful house with a nice lawn. In other words, my son checked every box I handed him. Sound familiar? It should. I was so proud of him. I used to tell people, My boy's got his head on straight, but I wasn't proud of who he was. I was proud that he was safe, and there's a big difference. The cracks started showing about 10 years ago. James was in his mid-30s. He came to visit one Thanksgiving, and I could tell something was off, like a man who shows up because he's supposed to. After dinner, we were sitting on the porch, and out of nowhere, he said something that cut me to the bone. He said, "Dad, did you ever actually want to know who I was? Or did you just want to make sure I didn't end up like Uncle Eddie?" I didn't know what to say. I think I mumbled something about just wanting what was best for him. But the truth was, he'd hit the nail right on the head. I had spent his entire childhood steering him away from anything that could hurt him. And in doing that, I made sure he never flew at all. There's a passage from a poet, a man named Khalil Gibran. I didn't find it until a few years ago, and I wish to God I'd read it when James was small. He wrote, "You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams." That one stopped me cold, because that's exactly what I did. I housed my son's body. I kept him fed, clothed, sheltered, safe. But his soul, the part of him that wanted to make art, to take chances, to find his own way, I locked that in a drawer, same as I did with Diane's napkin sketch, same as I did with my own dreams. I thought I was protecting him, but I was suffocating him. After that Thanksgiving, things just went quiet between us. Calls got shorter, and the visits stopped happening. Eventually, it was just a birthday text back and forth. That's it. That's what 40 years of father and son turned into. About 3 years ago, I found out from my daughter-in-law that James had started painting again, on his own, in the garage after work. He'd picked it back up after 20 years. 20 years of silence, because his father told him art wasn't practical. When she told me that, I had to excuse myself. I went out to my car and I sat there for a long time. My boy had a fire in him that I spent his whole childhood stomping out. And it was still there, still burning. After everything I did, it was still alive. And he'd hidden it from me because he knew I'd find a way to make it feel small. That's the thing about raising children with fear. You think you're building a fence to keep them safe, but all you're really doing is building a cage. And one day they either break out of it and resent you, or they stay inside it and lose themselves. Either way, you lose them. And what really gets me is that I thought I was being a good father. I genuinely did. I thought keeping him on the straight and narrow was love. I thought steering him away from risk was wisdom. Every other father I knew was doing the same thing. Just give them a stable life, a steady paycheck, and whatever you do, don't let them struggle like we did. We were all so busy with that, we forgot to ask if our kids were actually alive in there. I see the pattern now. My father raised me with fear, and I raised James with the same fear. 3 generations of men who loved each other but couldn't say it. We wanted to protect each other, but only knew how to control. My father told me, "Don't stick your neck out." So I didn't. And then I turned around and told my son the same thing, just with softer words. All of it code for the same message. Don't be brave. so that you don't end up like Eddie. And you know what happened? Well, my son listened, just like I listened before him. And now he's got a nice house and a steady job and a lawn that's always cut, and a father he calls twice a year, because the man never made him feel safe enough to be himself. I wrote James a letter about 6 months ago. Took me 3 weeks to get the words right. I told him I was sorry. Not for the big things, because there weren't any big dramatic moments. I told him I was sorry for the 1,000 small moments. For every time he came to me with a dream and I handed him back a warning. For every time he needed a father who listened and got a father who lectured. For the art I silenced, but especially for raising him to be safe instead of raising him to be alive. He called me after he read it. We didn't talk long, but he said something I'll hold on to for whatever time I have left. He said, "Dad, it's not too late." I hope he's right. If you're a parent, or if you're someone who was raised the way James was, I need you to hear this. Protection and love are not the same thing. That you can protect someone right out of their own lives. You can love someone so carefully that they never feel it. Your children are not smaller versions of you. They are, as that poet said, living arrows. And your job is not to keep them in the quiver. Your job is to let them fly. And if you grew up in a house where love looked like control and safety felt like a cage, that's fire in you, the one they tried to put out, it's still there. My son found his after 20 years. If he can find his, you can find yours. I'm 81. I can't undo the way I raised my boy. I can't give him back the years. I can't unsilence the art. But I can tell you this, don't pass your fear down to the people you love. It's the heaviest inheritance there is. If this one got to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you'd like to stick around, subscribe. The runway is getting shorter. What are you going to do with yours?